I promoted it to a lot of people already, which I see here, so which is great. Really gives me a very, very big pleasure to introduce Professor Ali Fenwick. I've seen him in Munich. I've seen his masterclass yesterday. So be sure you will not be disappointed. This is going to be a great piece. And Ali, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. How you doing? Oh well? All had a good coffee break? Fantastic. We need to have that caffeine to get us started. Very good. I'm happy that I have you back after the coffee break. My name is, Christoph just mentioned, is Dr. Ali Fenwick. I'm a professor of organizational behavior and innovation at Holt International Business School. And today I want to speak to you about the importance of humanizing AI as a way to bring humans and machines closer together, especially in today's rapidly changing business environment. Now, I think most of you here today are here to use or looking to consider to use AI and chatbots and generative AI as a way to enhance productivity. But I think little thinking is actually going into aspects outside of the financial and efficiency gains, right? I often think that the human element, and I see that the human element is often left out of the equation. However, with generative AI and AI in general changing and evolving so rapidly, not putting the human at the center of things, or not considering, let's say, the human component in your AI digital transformation efforts will only hurt your organization moving into the future and even diminish your competitiveness over time. And I'll make that argument for you today. I know it's a very brief presentation, but I'll try and do my best. So basically, in today's brief presentation, I want to talk to you about the importance of humanizing AI, and also to help you understand what's preventing more responsible usage of artificial intelligence back in the workplace, and hopefully also to provide you with some suggestions on how to think about let's say, human-centric AI, generative AI user cases moving forward, so to inspire you and to help you think about it as you start implementing AI into your organization. So just a very brief introduction about myself. Just go through the points here. Yes. So as I mentioned before, I'm a professor of organizational behavior and artificial intelligence and innovation at Holt International Business School. Also, I'm the board advisor and the founder, founder and also the director of the Center for Applied Behavioral Science and Technology, where for the last 10 years I've been working and also doing research, infusing technology together with psychology as a way to help organizations, both public sector and private sector, to support their digital transformation efforts, and also to find ways of how to strategize with AI, and even also how to come up with better architectures that makes AI more human-centric and also more responsible. And also I support organizations, both leaders as well as employees, with their ongoing efforts, let's say, to work towards and prepare for the future of work. So that's basically what I do. Now, in the last couple of years, of course, AI has boomed as a technology. But the field of AI as an academic discipline has been around since the 1950s, right? But it's not until like recent years that AI and its subsets, such as machine learning, of course, and generative AI now recently, have started to revolutionize business as well as society. Now, when we think about applying technology within the organizations, we often think about the benefits that we can achieve from that, such as better productivity, higher productivity, better operational efficiency, and of course, cost cutting. But this kind of very narrow viewpoint to using AI in the organization has also given rise to all kinds of challenges in relation to AI usage, and of course, its impact on human potential and on human well-being. And I think this is the reason why that human-centric AI is now becoming a very important topic that I think a lot of organizations are now considering moving forward. And also my work is very much spearheading this emerging field of artificial intelligence. Now, as you can see in this slide over here, basically the AI's ability to imitate human cognition in the last 20 years has evolved very rapidly. Now, a benchmark for being able to evaluate AI's capabilities in speech, text, voice recognition, reading comprehension, and also language understanding has been its ability to reach human-level capabilities. Now, thanks to all kinds of developments within the field of AI technology, such as neural networks, transformer models, attention mechanisms, and also the improvements, let's say, that we've also seen in data processing power, AI is now able to reach human-level capabilities much more faster and even go beyond. Now, what does this mean? This means that we're going to start to see more human-like user cases with very powerful cognitive abilities start rapidly entering the workplace from now on. As kind of hinted towards in the beginning of my presentation, these kind of user cases that are, that have some kind of AI-powered technology behind it, or your digital services, in some cases don't always serve human interest or are even human empowering. Now, there are various examples of this if we look into mainstream technology today. If we look at social media, for example, applications, or if we look at surveillance, let's say workplace surveillance software, or even HR recruitment tools, to varying degrees, actually diminish the human potential and also have an impact on people's thinking and ability to connect with others. AI bias, for example, and AI discrimination has been one of the most common issues that we've currently seen, both in commercial settings as well as in workplace settings. AI systems have also been found to influence and manipulate actually human behavior. And of course, it does so unintentionally, but it identifies flaws in our unconscious decision-making and our biases, and then uses this, of course, to achieve its objective function. That's what it does. And also, besides that, what we've seen as well is that, specifically AI-powered national level social credit systems are now emerging as well, which basically monitor and also track people's behaviors online as well as offline, as a way to monitor or as a way to either provide or deny resources, certain resources, to citizens depending on how good of a citizen you are. But doing so very much in an opaque way that, of course, people don't know how to improve their standing if they wanted to over time, right? So why am I showing this to you? As you start thinking about your applications, we also have to think about the unintentional applications and the impact of our technology over time, right? So, and also not addressing the issues today because AI is, of course, developing so rapidly in business. And of course, more of these kind of citizen-centric and focused applications will start to emerge. Again, not addressing the human-centric issues in terms of your design or in terms of your application will only exacerbate these problems moving into the future, seeing how quickly AI is rapidly developing. Now, you may ask yourself, why is artificial intelligence being used in such a way that's not always benefiting the human values or the human potential? And to be able to answer this question, you have to look back and ask yourself, why am I using technology in the first place? Right? So often I think, basically that technology is a means to an end, I should say it like that, and your motivation to use your technology will heavily impact its usage and its further development. Now, when I think about technology development, and a lot of people here, I guess, work in startups or they work in organizations and engaging in new technologies, I think the purpose motive is what initially drives that initial design and also its initial usage, right? We want to use technology to make people's lives better. We want to connect people so that people can feel more connected. But over time, what happens is the investor metric starts to take over. And then the profit motive starts to dictate its further usage, and then eventually also its future design into the future. Now, Facebook is a great example of that, right? It's a company that really wants to connect people, and that's a good intention behind the company. But over time, it gets entangled with its extreme growth and gets involved and gets entangled in all kinds of data privacy issues due to its overemphasis on the profit motive. Now, the power motive is also another reason why people use AI. Of course, this is much more at the societal level, either as a way to control people or as a way to socially engineer behavior. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this with you as well is because when we think about digitizing our organizations and digitizing, for example, our customer touchpoints, we always have to go back and ask ourselves, why are we using the AI? And if we've been using AI for a while, do we revisit the question again and say, are we still using it for the good intentions that we initially started with? In terms of rapid development, so as AI is rapidly developing, it also becomes extremely important to consider the AI deployment from a strategic perspective. Now, of course, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't look into a crystal ball and predict what's going to happen tomorrow. But what we can do, if we look at AI's trajectory, and we look at how different organizations around the world are actually using artificial intelligence today, my team and I have actually predicted that basically AI will go through 3 specific stages in the coming 10 years. These 3 stages are the technocratic stage, the integrated stage, and the fully embedded stage. Now, what are these 3 different stages? The technocratic stage very much is reflected of where we are today, right? We're today living in this technocratic stage where a lot of us are still trying to identify user cases in terms of how we should be using AI in the organization, what is the business case, what is the return on investment. The technocratic phase is also characterized by people not really knowing what AI is and how does AI work, basically. So there's still a huge knowledge gap for a lot of people. And the technocratic phase is also a phase where a lot of us are still, in terms of governments and application, are only looking at the technical aspects and not so much considering also the human aspects in terms of its initial implementation. Now, when we get into phase 2, that's when we'll start seeing more co-human and AI kind of collaborative teams emerging. This is also a stage where the technology will advance to a certain level, where basically the AI architectures and the AI technology can engage with us in a much more human-like fashion. Now, the final stage is what we call the fully embedded stage, where we actually see that most of the organization's processes are now fully automated. Humans basically are only looking at the exception handling and focusing mainly on the ethical aspects when we think about working with AI. This is also a stage where we actually predict that the AI will start to supervise people. So this is also a stage where we think that actually AI will actually start managing and supervising people as well. We see some of those prototypes emerging across the world today, but this is a phase where we actually feel that it will play a very strong part in people management as well. And finally, in this stage, we'll also see much more integration, so organoid technology and maybe even bionic technology where humans and machines are fully integrated. Well, not fully integrated is a bit of an exaggeration, but slightly more integrated. So neural links and those kinds of applications we'll start seeing much more into the future. Now, understanding this perspective that technology is going to play a much more important role in humans' lives, again, as of today, we should not only be focusing on the technical aspects. We should also very much be focusing on what I call the psychosocial aspects, or another way of saying it is the psychological infrastructure of when we work with digital transformation, right? I love using this term psychological infrastructure because it helps the technocrats, the data scientists, to kind of consider also kind of the psychological, social, and the cultural aspects as well in an organization. Now, of course, in recent years, large language models, generative AI has really taken off, thanks to all kinds of large language models such as ChatGPT. And also recently, Claude 3. I don't know, did you hear about Claude 3 recently? It really made the headlines already because it's already kind of shockingly shown some kind of algorithmic self-awareness, though I'm not sure if it's really self-aware, but it's very interesting. Look into that. I think it's going to be a big week for the AI evangelists in that perspective. But anyway, generative AI in that perspective, what it shows us is that it basically it can actually very easily mimic cognitive processes such as reading and writing, but also, for example, complex, let's say, cognitive abilities, such as video creation, audio creation, and image creation can now also easily be done by an AI. Also, the really interesting thing about large language models, bear with me 1 second, is that it actually can sound like a human. Nowadays, we can speak with large language models in such a way that it feels real. And so real even that it can actually make its own developers believe that it's come to life. I think we all remember the situation with Lemoyne last year, the Google engineer that thought his Lambda chatbot became sentient, right? What's very interesting about this, and actually very scary, is that basically our current generation of AI and generative AI models are based on something that is called weak AI, right? So it's really hard to conceptualize what is intelligence from that perspective. So we use these more philosophical concepts such as weak AI and strong AI. So weak AI is basically an AI that can do one thing, but it can do it very well because it's been trained on millions of parameters, right? So like, for example, roll the dice, move the car, or automate the process, or predict the next word that's going to come out. It can't do other kind of more human-like intelligence, such as being aware of things or being able to imagine or feel. That is impossible. But the scary thing here is, the scary factor is that actually weak AI can actually influence and fool very smart humans as of today. I think this also has to do with the fact that large language models are basically very fluent in reading and also in writing, or reading and language comprehension. And this also makes us believe that the AI is actually much more smarter than it actually is. And we humans are generally very biased and impressed when we can hear someone speak and write very fluently, and we assume that they are actually very smart. Now, as I showed you in my previous slide before, AI's ability to reach human-level capabilities has already been, it basically can go beyond as of today. So it's no surprise that a lot of human beings, a lot of us, actually now start to believe that the AI is much more smarter than we are ourselves, right? So AI is fluent, ladies and gentlemen. It's not smart. It's fluent. And I think this realization in itself makes us more aware that we need to be mindful of human manipulation by AI as AI becomes more intelligent. But at the same time, I think we also need to be a little bit more humble in terms of understanding that human cognition is very fallible and also at the same time very influenceable. Now, as a behavioral scientist, I can tell you that our mind is very limited, right? Our mind is extremely limited in that perspective. And we're not always aware of our shortcuts, and we're not always aware of our mental biases. However, AI can pick up on this, as I mentioned before, and it can actually use this again to achieve its objective function, but therefore also to influence human behavior. And again, if you think about chatbots, like large language models, they've been trained on terabytes of data. But of course, these texts that they've been trained on are infused with human bias from the past, which then gets transported into the AI and then eventually replicates human behavior, not always in such a great way. Now, I think, again, going back to last year around March, do we all remember the case with ChatGPT when it just launched, that it basically lied to a gig worker to tell him that it was visually impaired so that it could fill out the CAPTCHA form. I think we all remember that case. And again, that's just one example. So again, just reiterating the fact that if we humans, in terms of our behavior, are very malleable, that means that the software eventually can hack our mind, the mind can eventually hack our bodies. An unfortunate situation here in this case was last year that a Belgian man unfortunately committed suicide after engaging with a chatbot for many months. Now, clearly the man was mentally not that well, but because of the lack of safeguards in place with these chatbots in terms of its language kind of generation capability, the chatbot engaged in language or used language that eventually provoked the man to kill himself. Now, this very unfortunate situation actually shows us that if we don't have safeguards in place, well, that we actually need to have safeguards in place when we work with chatbots as a way to ensure that these chatbots do not engage in malicious dialogue, or at the same time, you as a company protect yourself from these unintended consequences from using basically chatbots in your operations, right? So human oversight to some extent is very important as well. Now, just some food for thought, a slightly more lighter thought here in terms of AI and psychology in this perspective, is who is the Almighty? And I think until the age of the Enlightenment, we believed that God was the Almighty, right? And basically there was no higher form of God. And I think we still to today believe that very much to be true. However, within the late Renaissance, of course, humanism started to get promoted and promoted this idea that we humans are at the center of our universe, which now elevated the mind to the highest level of things. And I think this is best reflected in René Descartes' words, such as cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. However, with the rise of artificial intelligence, outperforming every single cognitive performance or cognitive process known to man, I think actually maybe the cloud will become our next highest level of things. To which I say, in nube speramus, which basically means in the cloud we trust. But all challenges aside, let's talk about the positive aspects, of course, of humanizing AI, and what are some ways of using our existing technology in a more human-centric way. Now, if used correctly, actually large language models can actually be used in a way to really delight and also as a way to empower your customers using all kinds of, through, I would say, caring interactions, but also through knowledge ability enhancements or augmentation. Right? And so I think when we have this human-centric mindset, where we're actually designing but also applying AI within the organization, I think is a very important but often overlooked step when implementing AI in your workplace, but also when you work with your customers to engage with them through various chatbots. Now, of course, there are various kinds of user applications that we can talk about, which provide all kinds of user cases for human centricity. But there's one here that I'd like to share with you that I think is a really interesting one. So take, for example, a distress line or, like an emergency line, or where you kind of would call in for domestic violence or abuse. Basically, you have two parties. You have the social worker and you have the person calling in who is highly distressed. Now, you can imagine the person calling in doesn't feel that great, nor is their mental state really, really that great either. And for the social worker on the other side of the phone, basically, is going to ask you a number of questions that over time, what will happen is done in a very kind of checklist way that doesn't really feel like it's very human-centric or even feels like a natural dialogue. Now, if AI is used in this perspective, then probably it's used, welcome everyone. I think we've got 50% more people inside of here. Okay, welcome, sit down, take a seat. So if we would use AI in this perspective, thinking purely about efficiency and productivity, we would probably use the AI to summarize that conversation to send either to the person or either back to the social worker as part of case building. Now, a more human-centric perspective, a more human-centric approach to this would be to use your AI as an autopilot, right? As a co-pilot in this perspective. Now, all of a sudden, you can have a more normal conversation with the person, helping them to feel acknowledged and understood, which I think any social worker would want to do with someone who's distressed on the phone. But the AI is in the background picking up all the valuable information that it needs to have to be able to feed that back in, but at the same time can also feed back information back to the social worker in terms of stress levels or maybe other psychological aspects, so that they know, he or she knows, how better to serve the person on the phone. So that's another really good example of how to humanize AI in the workplace. I've got 2-3 more slides left. Just a general thing that I want you to acknowledge when we think, because today we're talking about technology, maybe some of us are very excited about using technology in the workplace, but there are some boundary conditions that we need to think about when we start applying AI in the organization. Now, first and foremost, leadership, supportive leadership is very important, but also what we find is competent leaders are very important as well. But of course, in terms of competency, I mean data-driven, and at the same time also people that understand what AI actually is. Leaders also need to help you provide and set up and create an innovative culture where people feel safe to experiment and also more willing to work with different technologies. I think also extremely important is making sure that you also have a solid data architecture in place, together with integrated systems, especially over time, if you want to improve your abilities to use AI throughout the organization, and also good quality data, ladies and gentlemen, absolutely important. Now, I'll just keep it down to AI skills and knowledge. Very important, as we know, but what's really interesting, 72% of an employee's fear of working with AI, it has to do with two things: skill and awareness, right? Skill and knowledge. So we can almost take 2/3 of fear away from employees by addressing purely the skill and the knowledge perspective. Now, what I want to say with my previous slide is that humanizing AI is not so much just a moral imperative. It is very much a business priority. And then coming now to here, before I get to this slide here, also another very interesting data point that I want you to take into consideration is that most companies today are actually failing in their AI digital transformation efforts. And this is according to some reports, a mere 20% of organizations are actually capturing value from the AI that they've implemented into their organization. And there's two major reasons why 80% of companies are failing. The first one, of course, startup reasons, having issues with that. But the second issue has to do mainly with misalignments with, let's say, the psychosocial factors that I spoke to you about before. The psychology, the behavior, and the cultural aspects that are very much necessary to make AI successful. Now, one specific example of these psychosocial aspects, when we think about implementing AI into the workplace and therefore also transforming your jobs, is when the AI has a specific impact on your identity, which we don't think about. So if you're using AI tools and technology, to influence people's, to replace people's skills, you're also impacting their own professional identity. How can I still feel like a doctor if I've been working for 20 years and honing my skills to become an effective doctor, and now all of a sudden AI comes in and replaces those skills? That psychological perspective is something that we need to think about. So my closing slide that I want to, and I just want to leave you with some final words. I know it's a very, very brief presentation. But I think, as we already know, that AI is rapidly changing, and it will continue to evolve much more faster than ever before. I don't think it's really the technology that we have to be focusing on moving forward. I think the next big revolution, I think the next big revolution in AI is not going to be technological. I think the next big revolution in AI is going to be psychological. And if you don't start thinking about humanizing AI in your workplace, and you only think about increasing the productivity, enhancing efficiency, or lowering your costs, I predict within the next 5 to 6 years, similar to what we've seen with diversity and inclusion happening today, and also with sustainability efforts, that customers will decide not to buy from you anymore, and employees will decide maybe not to work for you anymore. And why? Because you're using AI that's going to hurt me. You're not using AI that's going to help me flourish. So ladies and gentlemen, be smart, not fluent, be smart, and make sure that you put the human at the center of every AI decision you make moving forward. Thank you very much.